What's up everybody, how's it going? It's Berk, aka Dansgwait here, and welcome back to the Final Fantasy XII Attack Only adventure. We'll be continuing full steam ahead with this episode, having defeated Dr. Cid in the previous one, and there is still a lot of content to cover, so let's get straight down to business. As always, thank you all for supporting the series. Please remember to drop a like if you are continuing to enjoy the content, and let's begin with the aftermath of the Dr. Cid fight. Okay then, having defeated Dr. Cid, this was going to be another point in the game where I decided to take a little bit of time off to do a few more hunts and to try and get a little bit more Gil and a little bit more LP points along the way as I try to sort of go into the areas that require those hunts. And so in the same kind of fashion, I am going to continue to move through things relatively quickly. I think that upping the pace has definitely helped me to get through more of the content. They've been long episodes, they've been very kind of dense episodes. But I think it's helping me try to at least get through the series in a reasonable number of episodes. And so we're going to dive straight in here. There are going to be a few things, of course, that you're not going to see. But in general, you're going to hopefully get the gist and see where I'm at. Now, since I knew that things were going to really start to get serious once I started to make my way towards the Faywood, Giruvegan, the Great Crystal, it really did start to feel like I need to once again take a little bit of time out to upgrade, especially my armors, I think. It's going to get progressively more and more difficult if my armors can't keep up. So what I will do is just generally show you a few of the hunts that I did. Most of these hunts I defeated pretty easily, so I won't show all of them fully kind of from start to finish, but hopefully it should be enough to give you an idea of what happened against them. And so my first port of call was to head back to the Hen Mines, and the Hen Mines is generally a pretty nice place at this stage because any places that are dense with enemies, in general, they're quite, they're a bit more of a pain when you're first going through them. But if you were to backtrack a little bit and you're at a higher level and you're just generally stronger and you go back through them, they become pretty nice places because you can obviously farm those a lot more easily. And especially for LP points, it's very nice to just kind of put things onto ×2 or ×4 speed up and just quickly kind of romp your way through these places, like let's say the earlier parts of Lusu Mines or Hen Mines. So places that became a little bit more problematic in the first time through, they end up becoming relatively lucrative and nice to run through the second time round. So the first hunt is going to be Ixtab. This guy is at this stage a really easy one for us. It's a level 24 and it has 22,562 HP. And so we don't need to do anything particularly special for this one. You can see that my characters haven't been buffed and that kind of thing. I've got to the stage now where obviously I can use Balthea's measures for buffs if I want to. I can use things like Berserk, and that means I have some levers to pull depending on how difficult I think the fight's going to be. And because some of these preparations take time and it's a little bit annoying to kind of shuffle through and get all of these buffs on, where possible I do it in stages where if I think I can do it without any buffs, I just go in like that. And Ixtab was one of those where it's just generally easy enough for me to not have to bother with any kind of buffs. And so Ixtab was definitely a pretty quick one to get through. So our next target is going to be the Mind Flayer. This one is definitely a bit of a higher level. It's a level 35 and it has 31,161 HP. This guy definitely has some weaknesses, including darkness. So the Ashura is definitely going to be very useful. And it's very nice to have sort of accessories like the goggle mask at this stage, stuff that gives you that sort of status protection without having to use up an accessory slot, so that's really nice. One downside, of course, of these kind of special blades that you can get for the Shikari is that they are two-handers, and so that means that you can't use a shield. Now, that's going to become relevant later on, but for now, at least, at the end of the day, the main goal of using the Ashura is to afflict a status, and so it's great to have that ability with us for the upcoming hunts and storyline fights. So for the Mind Flayer, what you're going to see is because I have Ash Berserk, she kind of triggers the fight immediately. I get that final heal in on myself and then the fight begins. And what I haven't done here again is go super hard on the preparations. And we'll see how this one goes. I mean, you can see the damage from Ash, it's really strong. But the only problem was that it uses the Time Requiem move. And as of this point, I hadn't come in with the right preparations to deal with a move like this. It inflicts stop on everybody, and you need power armlets in order to avoid this, and I did not have any in my inventory, and you can see the results. Now, since I want to kind of make progress quickly, despite the fact that everybody was slowed, it didn't end up having a particularly detrimental effect It did literally slow us down, of course, and make it more difficult than it should have been, but what I will do is skip to a little bit later in the fight, where it started to use some interesting moves and challenged us a little bit before we managed to get the win. Now, this guy also has an invert move, which is really dangerous because as of this stage, I do not have a way to heal myself. And so as soon as he casts invert on someone, they're basically at the mercy of whatever the next move is going to be. So this fight went from like, I'm in total control and I did like 75% of his HP in like 15 seconds, to suddenly he's got protect on, much closer to full HP, and he starts using things like invert. And so yeah, that was the tables kind of turned slightly here. So what I will do is move things a little bit further along in the fight, and this guy continues to use invert, and we're getting closer to the win, and we've also inflicted slow here. So it turned into a much closer affair than it should have been, but I felt like I still had enough here. So you can see Ashe is still there, and she's berserked, but the defenses have really gone up. It's a classic thing we're very much used to seeing now. And in comes Blizzara. Let's see how much damage this is going to do. 1,200, 1,300, and 618 for Barsh. So thankfully Barsh had some protection against the ice there, and he's literally the last one left. He gets inverted as well, so he's one hit away from death here. And thankfully, he manages to get the final hit in, and as a result, we kill the Mind Flayer. So this was far from a good fight here, but I managed to get it first time, despite not preparing very well for it and getting myself stopped within like the first 10-15 seconds of the fight. So let's continue on to the next one. For this one, we had to go back to the Giza Plains and do a lot of running around so that we could access the Gil Snapper hunt. Now for this one, the game ups the ante a little bit. It's a level 37, and it has 86,956 HP. It is weak to lightning, and is weak to slow, blind, and silence. So once again, the Asura can come in helpful for me, and I can afflict both slow and silence as well. So in terms of status effects, I'm in a good position to be able to afflict them in the fight. And what I also decided to do for this one in particular was to make sure I had some buffs like Protect before getting into it, because there was definitely every chance that we were going to get taken out here. Okay, so here we go. Once again, we have one character who is berserked. I decided not to kind of berserk too many people at this stage. And we also do have an extra NPC helping us for this one. So silence immediately works, which is really nice. And you can see that Vaughn has his Ashura at the ready. And I very quickly made sure that Vaughn can get the barrel coat. I kind of forgot that he didn't have the license board for it, but now I can upgrade to it as a result. There you go. Every little helps in terms of the defense. And so I get that Viking coat onto Balthier because he's the one that's still in the front line for now. And we'll continue it on like this, and I'll save some of my heavier hitters for later, I think. So there you go. The blind has also hit, so thankfully the statuses are hitting pretty fast here. So we've managed to get silence, and we've managed to get blind on there as well. So it's a nice, strong start here. We're bringing in a Berserked Foebreaker. It's one of the best kind of damage outputs that we have in this challenge at the moment. So in comes Ashe. For now, I'm keeping the Ashura on Vaughn because I'm like, it seems to like be a pretty strong weapon. And the slow has also hit. You saw there, Pinello's long bolts have also worked. And having some long range is nice as well, because this guy probably has some kind of spinning attacks. And if it targets the long range one, it will very slowly walk towards it and buy us some time. And we've already seen that that can be very effective in these kinds of higher level battles as well. Okay, so let's get back into it now. And Vaughn has retained the Ashura, but we're starting to do pretty decent damage now. But generally the defenses are still pretty high here. So Flash comes in, but immune, because we have stuff like the Goggle Mask that can help us. But it's pretty slow going. It's obviously going to be a type of enemy that has some pretty good defenses. Especially slow as well, you can really see it in action, like the amount of time between the turns is pretty high here. It's silenced, it's been hit with blind. But it also has that annoying effect of when you hit it, you also take damage to yourself. I really hate that. But thankfully the amount is relatively low here. But most of those attacks still seem to hit, like Flatten doesn't seem to be missing very much. But all in all, it does seem like we are overpowering it with the four of us attacking it at the same time. Ashe is going to die soon. She's been taking a lot of hits, but she's dished out a ton of damage as well. And that's part of why she's died a bit more quickly, I think, because she's obviously taken a bit more kind of damage in return. Now, the slow has worn off here. But I'm relatively confident that I'm in a good position here, like it's very low on HP. And we're hopefully not going to see any kind of like crazy healing shenanigans. So in comes Balthea. Let's see if we can finish it. Yeah, not a lot of damage here. Yeah, even though he's using a gun, it doesn't seem to be doing like particularly crazy damage here. It's just got very good defenses across the board. And the NPC is giving us some buffs as well. Very kind. I mean, it's got most of its health. It's almost at full health still, so it worked out pretty well. But as you might expect, that final like 5% of his HP is always a pain in the ass. But it's just not damaging us enough here, and it is missing, thanks to that blind. It still definitely lands hits, but it's missing some too, which is helping. And there it is. Okay, so the Gil Snapper is defeated as well. So after this one, I did pay Mont Blanc a visit, and he gave us a few goodies as a result of the storyline bosses that we defeated, and the fact that we increased our rank. But my next target was to head back down into the Garamscythe waterway, because there were 2 more hunts to take on in there. So let's get to it. Okay, so the first one we have is the White Mousse, and this is a hunt that was around for quite some time. It's a little bit weird because it's only a level 15, but it has 69,469 HP, which is quite a lot considering the level. But because I knew that Fran had the fire arrows, which this enemy was weak to, I made sure that I got her the Berserker Bracer license board activation, and she could also pick up another swiftness, which is really nice for her job. So she's faster, and she can be berserked with that accessory. So that was going to be a nice combination for the 2 hunts down here. And the one nice thing about this is because you have the autosave available as well, it is pretty nice to be able to do your buffs, and then if it's possible, just quickly trigger an autosave and then run back in so that you can at least kind of retry with all of your buffs ready. And you don't have to keep redoing it every time, so it's kind of nice. Okay, here we go. White Mousse, let's go for it. I decided to put the Berserker on Ashe first here. I feel like, because Fran has fire arrows anyway, I feel like she's already going to do good damage. But I felt like maybe having Berserk for Ashe would be nice to have like a second character who can do big damage. So Toxify comes in, we're immune. The Tourmaline Rings help Fran and Penelo to avoid it. A Quagga comes in, that's pretty powerful. But we also have Viking Coats if we need it as well. Well, 1 Viking Coat. But you can see it is relatively spammy with its magic, and there's also status effects happening as well, so there's a lot of things to cover. And if you really want to, like if you're, let's say, lower level and you're struggling a little bit against this guy, you really need to juggle the menu quite a lot to kind of cover everything that it does. Like it will hit you with blindness, it will hit you with a bunch of different elementals, like there's quite a lot that it can do. So for us at least, we're pretty fortunate that because we are quite high level here, compared to it, it's not going to be too bad. There comes another flash. Immune. You can see that. So I decided to trade in the Berserk here just to make sure I could more easily cover what I needed to in terms of the protection. But despite that, eventually, because I am doing pretty nice damage here, I was able to get this one done and defeat the White Mousse. So we are going to move swiftly on to basically what I consider its bigger brother, the Orthros. This one is a level 34. And it has 87,141 HP. It's also kind of a funny one because it only comes out if you have an all-female party. So I start the fight like that, and then I swap in Barsh and Varn because they can deal a little bit more damage. And as you can see, this time around, I've kind of done the right thing. And I have Fran in Berserk status because this guy is also weak to fire. And so we have both the fire arrows, and we also have Berserk to do a little bit of extra damage. This guy is another one that likes to fire off a lot of different statuses and elementals. And the first one it hit us with was Sloga. We don't really have much in the way of slow defenses at the moment, so we kind of have to deal with it. But we did manage to at least afflict blind. Most of his attacks honestly are not physical, but every little helps at this point. Flash is not going to do too much to us, so that's at least one that we can kind of bypass here. And as of this point, we can generally start to take control of the fight. And if it does anything particularly dangerous, like for example Phantasmal Gaze, we can switch over to the Bowline Sash, or if there's anyone who doesn't have blindness protection, we can switch it over to the Argyle Armlet as well. So I'm going to move things along because things were looking quite good, and we'll move it on towards the end of the fight. You can see that Varn has been petrified here. It really does have quite a vast array of statuses, and sometimes either I was just getting a little bit lazy or I was a little bit too slow to swap over to what was necessary. But in general, we're still okay. You can see basically everybody is still alive. You can see their Phantasmal Gaze was coming in, but I preemptively made sure I switched to my Confused Protection, and then it immediately changes over to Braegh. So it's kind of a pain in the arse to constantly flip and switch between all of your stuff. And in general, that's kind of the story of the harder fights in this game. Basically, the more difficult things get, the more time you have to spend in the menus, like flipping between all of your stuff. For some fights and some situations, I just feel like it's just not worth it. If you can get through the fight, just like taking more damage, having a few people get KO'd, it's not the end of the world. But if you really kind of are pushing it to the limit and you want to optimize everything as much as you can, you have to kind of be watching the battle like a hawk. And literally like every few seconds, depending on which fight it is, you're going to have to dig into your menu. You're going to have to change like your helmet, your armor, or your accessory, depending on what you're getting hit by. And so this was an example of a fight where I did it on like a middling level, but I just could not be bothered to kind of switch it every single time because you just cannot cover enough things at the same time. So like for this guy, we've already seen like slow, we've seen petrification, we've seen blind, we've seen Thundaga, we've seen confusion, we've seen darkness. It's just like there's so many things at once here that if you really want to, you can kind of constantly switch it around and cover it. But for me at least, it just wasn't necessary, and you can still get the win even if you don't kind of have to play at that type of optimized level. But I think if you come in at lower levels potentially, and it's definitely much more deadly with its damage, then you might be forced to kind of play that game a little bit more. But I was able to get away with it, and that's another hunt in the bag. And now for the next one, I headed back into the Zertinan Caverns, and if you guys remember, in a previous episode, I encountered a hunt called Marilith. And this one I got very close to beating 3 or 4 times, but when it got down to its kind of last stand, it just got way too powerful. And I wanted to take this guy on again when I was a little bit more powerful myself, and especially when I had slightly better defenses so that I could withstand kind of that final onslaught, or at least kind of wipe it out before it got a lot of moves. So eventually, I came back to it for some revenge, because sometimes that just feels nice in these games, where you have something that was kicking your ass before, and you can go back and teach it a little bit of a lesson. So here we are against Marilith, and there it's spawned. Now watch how this one's going to play out. Varn comes in, you can see that he has the Asura equipped once again. Slow has hit. So that happened very fast. I can immediately bring in Ash here. And now we can get rolling once again. So have a look at the damage here. Over 1,000 for the Berserked Varn, but you can see Ash coming in doing like insane damage when she manages to connect. So the blind's not hitting here. 3,500 there from Ash in one hit. You saw that. That was crazy. So having seen that, I was thinking like, yeah, maybe Ash should have the Berserk. This is why oftentimes I kind of preferred her to have it. When she gets that good RNG and she gets those big hits with like the axe or the hammer, the Berserk, I assume, is just going to amplify it to a massive level. But you can see the damage is definitely erratic, and that's just kind of the nature of those weapons. But when they hit, they really hit hard. 4,116 there. And so now this is where things are used to kind of get really dangerous, and it was wiping us out like very, very quickly. And so Varn dies, but I have a whole kind of other set of characters, and my armors and stuff are better now, and I can do damage more quickly. So I'm hoping that this phase is just not going to last long enough for it to be much of a problem. 470, 480, so you can see those combos starting to come in there. It's really attacking us quickly here. But some good blocks as well from Barsh, and there you go. So definitely had a much easier time of it second time round. And so after this set of hunts, I finally managed to raise a little bit of funds. I think I got up to about 65,000 here, and that unlocked a few opportunities for me in the shops. So I managed to buy a couple things, including power armlets. You saw the stop issues that I had against Mind Flayer, and so getting those power armlets was definitely a nice idea. Stop is a really detrimental status, of course, and so being able to protect against that was going to be pretty huge. And so once I got those, it was back to Balfenheim to do a little bit more shopping. Now, as I show you some of these purchases I made in the background, there was actually one final thing I wanted to do before continuing the story and moving on to the Faywood. Now, there was a couple of things that I wanted to fight. One was the Braegh hunt. The reason I wanted to do this one was because if you can do this hunt, the reward for it is actually another measure. Now, you've already seen the good work that the guilt measure has done for Balthier, and I thought it was about time I got another one to further boost my chances of success in future boss fights. And the Braegh hunt will give you the Caliper as a reward, and the Caliper will allow you to get haste on hit. So we will now be able to put everyone in protect and haste before a given boss battle, which is going to be absolutely huge. Now, there is one slight problem. Before I can actually get to that fight, I need to get through the King Bomb, and you saw that King Bomb gave me a lot of trouble in a previous session. So before we move on to that, it is time for a rematch against the King Bomb. So let's head to there. Alright, here we go. Time for the Bomb King rematch. You can of course see that Varn has stuff like the Flame Shield now equipped, but I now have things like Ghillie Boots, which will make me immune to oil. And you saw that oil was a big problem last time. And so as a result of that, I definitely feel like I already had a bit of a better chance thanks to oil. So I definitely have my buffs at the ready here. I've got Protect on there because of course it can do a lot of damage. And I am of course stronger. I have better equipment, I have better armor, and my levels are slightly higher. So Varn goes in by himself here because he's the one with the Ghillie Boots. And this stops me from getting hit with oil from the very start of the fight. So this was part of my strategy. And I also managed to afflict slow on the King Bomb, which was also a nice start. Now the idea here was to bring in a berserked character like Ashe, and Ashe would basically now and then attack the smaller bombs and kill them off for me. So the idea was to kind of have two characters focusing on the King Bomb, and whenever the minions would spawn, I could have a character that was berserked take those on. So that's what I'm doing here. Begins casting oil, and so this is the risk that I take here. Thankfully, one of them missed, but the other one hit. So Ashe has now been hit with oil. And so unfortunately, this didn't work too great. But if you look at the damage bar here, the health bar, we've done a lot of damage. So that's definitely one good thing. So the strat didn't work like perfectly well here, but I'm definitely kind of keeping people berserked as much as I can. So now it becomes these three guys. And we have the Adamant Vest to also reduce fire damage here, which is nice. Let's go. So the idea is basically keep attacking like this, and because we have a berserked character, I'm hoping that the next time it's going to do a cry for help, Barsh is going to be able to take some of those out relatively quickly. So that's the plan. So I remove one of the characters to reduce the chance of getting oil here. And then I noticed that despite the cry for help, nothing came. So I'm not exactly sure why that happened. I don't know if it's because we kind of attacked it quickly enough or something. But you can see like nothing spawned, even though it did cry for help. And now we're really doing big damage once again. So a long-range attacker coming in so I can kind of attack it as quickly as possible. I think there's a chance where if it kind of runs away and it creates enough distance, that's when it does cry for help. And it does it successfully. Now we were just about to kill it here. Look at this. We were really close to getting the killing blow there, but unfortunately we had to deal with a second renew here. Now it's trying to kind of get away from us, but we're staying close to it. And it's not done another cry for help. So this is helping us rack up a lot of damage right now. And so it's definitely going way better than previous attempts. And we still have a lot left in the tank. Varn's fallen, but we still have plenty of characters here. Now, I've got my fiery arrows here, and thankfully I don't make the mistake there. And I switch those out. Get those adamant vests on. And let's see if these guys can finish the job. If you can basically avoid those cry for helps, that really kind of increases your chances greatly. I don't know how much of that is RNG, how much of it is kind of setting up a strategy in which you don't give it room to breathe as much, where like you have a long-range attacker that can track it across the map a little bit better. But whatever the case, I finally managed to defeat the King Bomb, and after getting a little bit stronger, a little bit better prepared, it ended up being a relatively simple fight. And so with that, I could move on to the Braegh and get myself the Caliper. Now, the Braegh is a level 35, and it has 43,283 HP. All said, it's actually not that particularly powerful, and it was a very easy fight for me to win, so I don't think there's too much that I need to kind of show here. I think the fight's over quickly enough that while I'm talking about all of this, it should hopefully already basically be done. And the main thing about this one was that you get that Caliper, which I mentioned, which is going to be huge and will definitely feature in future boss battles. So definitely getting that kind of measure collection is going to be very useful for me as I head further and further towards the end of the game. So now what I will do is show one final hunt, and then we will progress with the story. So this one, I was looking at further kind of equipment that might be useful for me that wasn't going to be like super grindy, and just something that I could do as a result of completing a hunt. And I noticed that on the Cerobi Steppe, there is the Vyraal hunt. This guy is a level 41 and has 106,616 HP. Now, I was defeating stuff in like the 80 to 90k range, and I was feeling fairly confident. I've got a lot of things at my disposal now. This guy is weak to wind, is weak to slow, is weak to blind, and is weak to silence. And lucky for me, those are all things that I can exploit, and so I felt like I had a pretty good chance of defeating Vyraal. So let's take a look at that. We also have an NPC to assist us as well, so having 4 people on the hunt here is definitely nice. You can see I've already used the Caliper here to give these guys haste, which is kind of nice. And it came in there with 2,100 damage, and then a 1,800 afterwards. So I got a little bit cocky here. I didn't take the time to put Protect on. Probably should have. But I was kind of confident in my damage output and the fact that I can put these statuses on. So Slow is already on, and Varn is working on the Blind now. Let's see if we can get it. Thankfully, our NPC gave us some protection there. You can see Barsh has it. And we also have the Adamant Vest again to help us deal with Fireball. Barsh now has Shell as well. So he's got a lot of buffs here. But you can see I'm really rattling through that damage pretty quickly. We also got given haste, so the NPC is really doing a great job of helping us out here. And Barsh is taking a lot of punishment, but because he has a lot of buffs, he's doing a nice job of kind of holding up here. And utilizing that big HP that he has. So Magic Barrier comes up, but already we've done so much damage. And because this is an attack-only challenge, being immune to magic is obviously no problem for us. And so, with a little more effort, it does go down, and Vyraal becomes a pretty easy hunt for me to take out. Now, the reason I wanted this was because I ended up being able to get an Aegis shield. And this one is one of the more powerful shields you can get, because it has some very nice magic evasion, which I figured could be useful, because as you've seen, like Reflect, I think is not the greatest thing in this game. It felt to me like a lot of the magic that you take, Reflect doesn't work too well, and so maybe being able to magic evade instead might be a nice kind of substitute here. So having done all of this, it was a final little piece of shopping, and then we can move on to the Faywood to continue the story. Okay, let's take a look at this first encounter. Deadly Nightshade, level 41, 3,600. So the random encounters here, once again, they're in that sort of 8 to 10 level higher than us kind of range. So that makes them fairly dangerous. And these Nightshades are also obviously a problem because they do a lot of different statuses. So Pollen comes in here. Sleep, Slow, Poison. I mean, again, I can't cover all of those at the same time. So this is one of those situations where actually this was a really, really bad random encounter for me, and so my kind of first entry into the Faywood was incredibly rough here. And already my gut reaction was that maybe I shouldn't hang around here for too long. Maybe I kind of need to bypass these guys a little bit because they're just, they're quite brutal. And well, more and more of them are coming in here. I'm getting outnumbered. And they have a decent amount of HP. It's not like I'm completely destroying them like really quickly. And I'm just getting hit with so many statuses. So this was not looking great. You can see already from the first random encounter I'm starting to get wipeouts here. I did not kind of do any prep coming into this one, so I didn't give the whole party like protect and haste before these random encounters. And I'm kind of paying the price here. Nasty. I think of these, sleep is the biggest problem, so I think if you're going to protect against one of them, it probably should be sleep. But also you can get hit with blindness too. So there's just a lot of really nasty ones that could cause you problems. So literally just killing the first set of those guys already kind of took quite a lot out of me. But it's the kind of thing where this is the type of area where if you want to bypass them, you can bypass them. And it was kind of a mix of trying to manage my resources and also bypassing when necessary. So it took a while, but I had to heal everybody back up and get a few buffs back on there as well. And this is one place where there's definitely some nasty traps as well, so you have to try and equip a bangle. Now, especially if they don't kind of come in particularly high numbers, you can definitely take them out a bit more quickly. There you go. So I took them out very fast. Yeah, so it felt to me like the Faywood, it was kind of designed to mess with you. Like as soon as you enter, they placed a trap there, and they placed a pack of deadly nightshades, all kind of designed to come in and really rattle you as soon as you enter the area. So what I'm also doing here is trying to get used to the practice of if I have buffs on anybody and I don't particularly need them in that moment, trying to keep them off the front line. Because obviously the more time they spend in the front line, they're going to obviously drain away those positive buffs that they have. So Varn kind of runs around by himself, and then once a battle triggers and I want to include my other characters, then I can kind of bring them in. So I started to do that a lot more at this stage, because I was trying to keep the buffs on a little bit more frequently, since the enemies are definitely getting more difficult. So it's a lot of this type of work here, just kind of coming in. As soon as I see something on the top left, like confuse obviously, trying to change to that. And a lot of just menu juggling to keep myself from getting particularly nasty status effects. And so despite that kind of initial flurry where I got put in a lot of trouble and a few people got KO'd, after that it was definitely much easier. So you can see I'm starting to definitely take care of things here. And so before long I was able to make it to the next storyline battle in the Faywood, and this is against the Rafflesia. Now this was one of the very few bosses I actually remembered from my first playthrough of Final Fantasy XII, and the reason being was because back when I was playing that the first time, I was definitely using stuff like MP a lot more, and I had a lot of kind of obviously like magic for attacking and buffing and debuffing and all of that kind of stuff. And once I entered that fight and I saw the whole MP draining effect and the status effects that it could do, it was actually one of the few fights where it felt a little bit kind of tense and scary in the game, because by and large I think when I played through the main game for the first time, I would say, especially because it was the Zodiac Age version, it was relatively it felt pretty easy. But that was one of those bosses that definitely stood out to me as being dangerous once I entered the arena and I started seeing what it could do. And so I wondered if it was going to be that way in this playthrough. So let's take a look at the Rafflesia boss battle. Here we go. This guy is a level 43 and it has 73,393 HP. And you can see the magic field and MP being drained, but for us obviously that is completely irrelevant. And you saw very, very quickly the Orichalcum Dirk managed to afflict slow, so that's a very good sign. I switch it over to the Ashura because it's also susceptible to blind, and things are already happening very, very quickly in this fight. Begins casting sleep, and so this is where that whole menu juggling begins, and thankfully at this stage I'm really starting to get protection for a lot of the potential statuses that I could be dealing with. So I have to kind of lose Berserk in many cases to make sure I cover the status, but it's definitely very much worth it to do. So now I'm trying to silence, I'm really trying to get like all of the statuses on there if I can. He's doing like such little damage. Well, he's doing no damage here because the weapon is so weak. But he does get the silence on there. Now he has been sapped, but at this stage I don't think it's going to be a huge deal. Sap, as you've seen, rarely kind of makes the difference. Now Pollen Dance is coming. Let's see what happens here. Everyone is confused. This one I was not ready for. It was definitely not the greatest moment of the fight. I should have protected against it, but next time I'll definitely know what I need to do. You can see me get the bowline sash on there. As I said, I think I wasn't kind of looking up every single specific move at this stage because it just takes so much more time for every boss. Just like, they do tend to have a vast array of moves, and you have to kind of search up each one to see what it does. Nectar Volley. Let's see what that one does. Doesn't seem like much at the moment. I think it might have been Sap again, but we've already covered it. So you can see here, I think we're doing really well. We still have reserve characters. No one's been KO'd yet. And it's already down to about a third, nearing a quarter of its HP. And so I haven't even played like my haste card here. I could have come in with everybody hasted as well with the caliper. But this is what I mean. Like, I basically didn't need to mess around with that whole thing. It's looking like we still have enough here. Just making sure I still protect against a potential confuse. That's the most dangerous status we have to deal with here. But thankfully for us, it was relatively painless, and we defeated the Rafflesia pretty damn easily. And with that, the path to Giruvegan becomes just that little bit clearer. And so now at this stage, what I'm going to do is again try to move things on relatively quickly. The enemies here definitely start to get notably stronger, but I think with a mix of basically kind of taking my time, if necessary, using Balthea to give everybody protect before I start these fights, using haste if I need it, again to try and end the fights more quickly, using my items, you know, sometimes escaping if I need to, a mixture of all of those kind of things. I was generally able to keep up with what was going on here. It is definitely worth mentioning that this particular area of the game does have some potentially very lucrative chests, but it's another one of those where the odds of those chests coming up and those chests containing the lucrative item can be relatively low. And for now at least, I was definitely in the sort of push through the story kind of mode, and I wasn't really interested in kind of zoning in and out and trying to farm for particular chests. Now thankfully there is one chest that will appear 100% of the time, and so it doesn't require any bullshit, and that is the chest which contains the bubble belt. And so finally, after getting this deep into the game, I actually have a bubble belt to use. For anyone who might not know, the bubble belt is something that will double your HP. Now this is great, of course, because this is something that you can now set up before boss battles, or if you're trying to go through a particularly difficult area. Bubble is an invaluable tool in this type of run. And up until now, we haven't had access to it, but we finally do as a result of this first bubble belt, and you'll definitely start to see it come into use. So you can either, for example, give it to Barsh to double his HP up to almost quad 9, or you can give it to someone like Penelo, who's normally very low in HP as a time battle mage, and give her a greater chance of survival. Now the next level version of this is of course getting the measure called Euclid's Sextant for Balthea, but that's going to be a little bit further down the line because you have to do slightly more work to be able to pick that one up. But for now at least, we're going to make do with the bubble belt, and once I do get Euclid's Sextant, then we'll talk more about that and why that's going to be an insanely useful tool when we're trying to defeat some of the most difficult enemies in the story. But you can see here, like a few times, even if there's like numerous enemies around me, they're definitely chipping like a decent amount of damage, so you need to heal a bit more frequently. And the item drain is relatively high, but in terms of pure like survivability and being able to make progress, it's definitely doable. I think the final enemy that I'll show here for this particular part is going to be the behemoths, because they are basically the strongest enemies that you can fight here. They have over 11,000 HP, which is definitely pretty heavy. And this is what it looks like when you try to fight them without any kind of specific buffs beforehand. I decided to try the sledgehammer with Ash to see if I can disable them, because it could be a pretty strong thing to do if it hits. So let's see what happens when the three kind of hard-hitting melee guys go in for this. That guy's berserked himself. So slow does work, which is nice. And it's taken quite a few hits. Their defenses are pretty good. Thankfully the Thundara didn't do a crazy amount of damage. Yeah, I kind of got like caught into this, but there we go. 496 Wild Berserked. It's still not too terrible here. 616. So you can see like definitely doing relatively like significant damage, but not something that we can't like heal back from. And definitely not really enough to wipe out the party here. So I think you can see that I was pretty safe through the Faywood. Now this is kind of funny because this is the part where technically I failed this challenge. Because this is the attack only challenge. And the problem here is that in order to enter Giruvegan, you need to summon Belias. And at this stage, I hadn't used Belias because I didn't need it on the license board. So I had to kind of pick someone to end up using Belias, because if you don't summon him, you cannot literally progress through. Now, technically, the challenge has always been to use attack only while in battle. And since we're not in battle, summoning, I think we can allow this one. I need it to get through the story. But on like the most absolute purest technical sense, it's kind of funny because you do fail the challenge here. Because you would need to literally select the summon command in order to continue the story. So depending on how you view this challenge, it kind of ends here. But obviously, I think for the way that I've set it up, and for my purposes, it's just kind of a funny little detail. And we move onwards and upwards into Giruvegan. And so before long, we are immediately met with some opposition in the form of Daedalus. Daedalus is a level 42 and has 65,644 HP. Now what you can see already in this menu is that I've taken this one seriously, and everybody has Protect and everybody has Haste. So let's see how different this fight looks when everybody is prepped at this kind of level. In terms of the fight, it's relatively straightforward. I think this guy's a pretty simple kind of level check type guy where it's a very simple like, can you out damage him kind of thing. I don't think there's too much to do in terms of strategy against this guy. You just have to be strong enough and fast enough to kill him before he kills you. So Tri Attack comes in, it does a lot of damage there, even with Protect. Darkra comes in, so I'm still doing my little juggling around of stuff here. So I'm really taking this battle seriously. I'm not just letting myself get hit. I'm sacrificing, so immediately going back onto the Berserker Braces to continue the damage, and already I'm closing in on halfway here. Forgot to equip a shield for him. But there you go. Tremor comes in, they both blocked it. Really nice. Silence from both here. And now I can bring in Ash for even more damage. 438, 399. That's a pretty nice combo that I got hit by there. But overall, I've got some good defenses at this stage. And, well, my HP has obviously been creeping up. Barsh is almost at a natural 5,000 here. And Ash 3,100 and Varn 3,700. So, yeah, we've definitely been leveling up. Now, that was a pretty big move. But we have quite a few characters in reserve here. So should still have plenty to get this done. Barsh has fallen 2. So it does seem like those hastes were necessary. I think if I didn't give anybody haste and protect, I think we probably would have failed here. So time for someone else to get the Berserker Braces now. So always that final little bit. Once those characters start falling, those defenses start growing. Ash is now gone too, and so it's my usual suspects, the 3 long-range guys that are the last ones left. Let's see if we can finish it off. Yes, we can. So Daedalus falls at the first attempt. And so after dealing with Daedalus, we have to go further into the Giruvegan interior. And here, once again, the ante is upped a little bit. And it becomes kind of a little bit similar to what happened in the Faywood. Let's take a look at these first encounters. It's the behemoths again, but they are slightly higher level. And the fact here is that because the paths are relatively linear and it's quite a long way to get through, it's a little bit mazy, you will encounter a lot of enemies, and it's pretty difficult to kind of get through this bit completely unscathed. And so I thought to myself, even though I'm taking quite a lot of damage here, and it's going to be quite a lot of healing and reapplying buffs and that kind of thing, it's probably worth doing because I can get quite a lot of experience here. And well, completely running through here is probably not a great option either because these guys are going to chase you down and you'll probably take quite a lot of damage along the way. So I'll show you guys a few fights in the background from this bit. It was definitely one of the more kind of long and annoying bits here, and there's quite a long gap between kind of where you enter and where the next save crystal will be to heal. So while you're in between, you will have to rely on quite a lot of items to make sure that your health continues to kind of stay up to scratch. But on an individual level, again, the enemies aren't too bad. They will definitely do some damage to you, but I think if you keep your buffs up and you don't try to bite off more than you can chew, you take a little bit of time to, for example, avoid packs. Sometimes the way that they're kind of drifting and patrolling around, you can kind of draw one of them out and defeat them one-on-one and then go in and take on 2 or 3 more. If you just kind of completely dive in, sometimes you'll get yourself in trouble where there'll be like maybe 4 enemies around you, and then things can definitely get more dangerous. But I think as long as you're kind of patient, take your time, and just use the resources that you have, it shouldn't be too bad. And thankfully most of the enemies here are the same. It's going to be behemoths and gargoyles, and you should be able to take those guys down on your way through. In general, I definitely didn't defeat every single enemy along the way, but I did take on a lot of them. And as you get nearer towards the lower floors, you encounter Vivians, which are like a higher level type of Malboro. And they can definitely be dangerous. It is a little bit of an RNG game. It depends how quickly they use their most annoying moves. And especially if there's like 2 or 3 of them around, you can potentially get yourself in trouble depending on which moves are used. So I'll show you one encounter against them. You see the Time Requiem move, and you see that's the move that messed me up when I was fighting against the Mind Flayer. But this time I have the power armlets. Now unfortunately you can see here that Fran doesn't have enough LP points to unlock this. And so that's become like a pretty important accessory that I need. But for now at least I kind of have to deal with it because Fran can't be swapped out. Thankfully we take it out first, but not in time. So she still gets stopped here. 2 of them get stopped. So yeah, stop is still one of those statuses that's really dangerous for me that I need to deal with. But you can see even in this scenario now I just kind of sit and wait, and eventually stop will be removed. And then I just have to heal back up and get going once again. So it was definitely a little bit of kind of slowing down back and forth. It did take some time. It was one of the more kind of arduous sections of the playthrough. But I do manage to get through and set myself up against the next boss battle, which is one that actually caused me a bit of trouble. So the next boss battle we are going to be facing is Tyrant. Now up until this point, the amount of HP that you've been hearing for storyline bosses has been in like the 60 to 70,000 range for some of the higher customers. This guy has 180,428 HP. That's huge. It's more than basically double the HP of pretty much anything that we've faced in the story so far. So in terms of HP, it is a big spike. You can see it's using things like Fireball. Now thankfully we do have some pretty good protection against that kind of thing. But you can see how slowly that HP bar is moving here relative to some of the other stuff that we faced. And these hits are pretty powerful here. So it's attacking quite frequently and it's hitting relatively hard. So already one of our characters has died here. And it's going after Penelo. 811. She's not going to be able to handle too much of that. She's going to die relatively quick. The Time Battle Mage obviously definitely does not have great HP. But we did give her the Bubble Belt, which we've picked up at this point. And that's definitely allowed her to survive a few more hits. Fireball comes in, and 603 damage. Penelo is dead. Now, this guy is weak to ice, and unfortunately I don't have any ice arrows or ice weapons to be able to use against this guy. And so that's already a bit of a problem. We can't exploit the elemental weakness here. And also, it is basically immune to all of the status effects that I could put on it, except for Confuse, which I can't afflict at this point. And you can see Piercing Giruvegan comes in, and that's even worse. So Piercing Giruvegan means that you can't do anything to stop it. If you have a Reflect, for example, it's just going to pierce straight through it. And Giruvegan just does a lot of nasty, nasty damage that you quite literally cannot avoid. And you also can't stop it from using that move either. And so it's basically going to come down to, can we survive before piercing Giruvegan and the other array of nasty moves takes us out. So 1,200 you saw from that lunge. Absolutely destroyed. And we only have 2 characters left here. And already we're not even down to like half HP at this point. So my first attempt was really, really bad against it. But this was a bit of a feeler attempt. You saw that I didn't have like my full buffs and all of that kind of stuff. And I will show you what happened when I started to come in this time with like full preparation and see how we did. Okay, so this time you're seeing me go all guns blazing because I'm starting to use things like Bacchus's Wine. And this means I can have multiple characters in Berserk because I only have 1 pair of Berserker braces at the moment. And so I need basically more Berserk characters to really maximize that damage output. And so you're seeing everyone's going to have Protect. Everyone's going to have Haste, and I'm going to have a bit more Berserk in the mix as well. I also opt for Barsh as my Bubble Belt character because he has the highest natural HP. I'm kind of hoping that once he's in there, he can be a bit of a tank as well. So I've also given him the Domain Calvados, or whatever it's called, the thing that basically gives you bravery. And so Barsh here is going to be like my kind of main hope in terms of kind of surviving and doing a lot of damage. So Fireball comes in, and at this stage again I'm doing my best to really like juggle through the menu. If I spot anything that is doing that I can protect against, I'll definitely try to do that. So you can see all 3 Berserk characters going ham here. Another Fireball, but they all have some kind of protection against it, so it's doing half damage. But once it really focuses in on a character and starts attacking them, like they're not going to survive for too long. But thankfully this time around we did a really nice job, and we've done way more damage than we did last time before our first character got taken out. But compared to my earlier attempts, this was definitely already looking way better. I definitely got far closer. And it felt to me like as long as I could find a way to maybe deal with piercing Giruvegan, or if it was a little bit more RNG based whether or not it would use it, I feel like that would probably make the difference. So you can see how close I got here. Blizzarga's coming in. Balthier's the last one standing. Surely from here he's not going to be able to pull out a win. The animation's already begun on him. Let's see if I can kind of stop it. But I think it's already too late here. The animation's already kind of hit me, so it's not going to do anything. Let's see. Yeah, 1095. And the Berserk is gone, and piercing Giruvegan comes in again, and I have no chance. But you saw how close I got. So this was definitely falling within that realm of I probably just need to try again, and I might be able to break through, like maybe get more combos, get more blocks in, avoid piercing Giruvegan a little more. Surely there's a chance I can get this done. So let's head in for another attempt. Alright, here we go again. This was, I think, attempt number 4 or 5 at this point. But I really had to start pulling out all the stops here. There's my Berserked trio once again. Let's see who he's going to go for. Decide to target Ashe this time. I think this is probably a better outcome for us. Ashe's defenses are generally pretty good. But now it's switched over to Varn. So this really helped us here. Last time it focused its attention on Varn and then killed him off like first. It was much more kind of exclusive in the way that it targeted Varn. But this time you're seeing, because they're able to survive a bit longer as a trio here, they're able to do even more damage than the previous attempt that you saw before the first character gets taken out here. So Fyraga's going to come in. Alright, here we go. Not too bad. So Varn is taken out, but if you look at how much HP Tyrant has left at this point, it's definitely way less than where we were at last time. She's got some fire protection thanks to the sash. Now let's see if we can survive a few extra turns here before Ashe gets taken out. Piercing Giruvegan comes in, so Barsh gets hit with the full force of that. And Ashe is of course dead. But Barsh is still doing relatively well. He's still got 3,500, he's still got Bravery, Berserk, Haste, and Protect. So he's really got everything here to try and do as much damage as possible. So Balthier comes in, also Berserk now. And we'll see if Barsh can survive this onslaught here. 1,106, that's a lot of damage. switch to the fire protection. Try and keep him alive just that little bit longer. Okay. Yeah, it seemed like it almost didn't happen there. I wasn't sure. It said casting Vyraal, but we're still doing a lot of good damage here. And Barsh is putting up a nice stand, but we are going to get killed once again here. Get the Berserker on her as well. Get the Ruby Ring on her, in case there's a chance we deflect something. Now, let's see if these guys can finish it off. Thundaga comes in. This didn't last time. But the good news here is that we can completely mitigate the damage from Thunder. And there you go. So it seems to only hit Balthea. And it might be the case that because we spaced out here, maybe the other two attackers were outside of the AoE. So this was huge near the end here. Let's see if Balthea can hold on for just a little bit longer here. He survives that attack. Blizzaga comes in. See what happens. Is it going to reflect? I think it only hit Balthea again. So I think that this fight, spacing out, might have actually worked in the end. And as a result, we managed to get the win. So I think it was a mix of just like maybe potentially more favorable RNG and just making sure that I had all of my possible buffs and preparations in play before taking on Tyrant. So it took 4 or 5 attempts. And for me, at least, I think it was one of the most stubborn and difficult to beat storyline bosses so far. I was definitely relieved to get the win against Tyrant, but before I move things along and entered the Great Crystal, I wanted to just do a couple of little things just to pick up some extras that I'd seen that I thought might be useful before continuing on. One of these was actually the Vorpal bunny hunt, and the reason I wanted to do this was because you actually get 2 particularly useful rewards as a result. The hunt itself you're seeing in the background is nothing special, it's relatively low level and it's just a bit of a pain kind of chasing it around and depleting its HP, so that's no problem. But the rewards that you get, one is another pair of ghillie boots, and that's obviously going to protect us against any more bosses or enemies that want to put oil on us, because oil is a very, very dangerous status, and so having a second pair is definitely nice. I also actually get some lightning arrows. Something we're still, I think, pretty deficient on is elemental attacks. We've definitely done pretty well in terms of statuses we can apply, but we are quite lacking still, and one of the reasons the Archer is good is because the Archer can gain access to a bunch of elemental arrows. Now, some of these require more work than others, and just looking through them, I was just kind of picking and choosing which ones I want to bother with at this point. And this one, since it gave me the ghillie boots as well, I thought it's like a nice little easy hunt that I can quickly do to get myself another elemental option. And so now, Fran can also do lightning damage with her arrows. And so it was a relatively brief detour, and with that, it was on to the Great Crystal. Okay, my friends, welcome to the Great Crystal. At this stage, I was really feeling like I need to just move on and push through and see how much of the story I can get done. And so the Great Crystal is, of course, a very complicated place. But at the same time, if you're only here to basically try and push the story forward, it's actually relatively easy to get through the first time. And so what I will do here is just show like a couple of the encounters, and in general, I think that's all you'll need to see, but I will definitely come back here in the future. But for now, at least, we have level 45 OCs or OCs to take through. So let's have a look at this. I don't really have any kind of buffs going on here. I wanted to just kind of go in and see what we can do. It really does take a long ass time to get buffs on everybody, and so I definitely there were phases I got a little bit lazy with that whole thing. It's kind of, again, if I feel it's really necessary, then I do it. But if not, I think it's just quicker to sometimes just use an extra X potion or 2, you know, at this stage of the game. So let's see it. So yeah, that's a really nice start. Again, like that's the kind of move where it's a bit of an RNG. Like if that happens, then, you know, there's not too much you can do about it. There's just so many statuses there. You're going to need like a ribbon to protect against that, and we definitely don't have a ribbon right now. So this first encounter is, sometimes I feel like the game, like whenever you enter an area for the first time, it gives you like a particularly nasty RNG just to kind of let you know where you're at. Honestly, this didn't happen too many times while I was in the Great Crystal, where you'd be hit with like all of the statuses and you'd get wiped out and that kind of thing. So I think it was just a little bit of a kind of not representative battle here. Yeah, Thundaga kind of didn't happen. But despite that, like, really nasty set of moves, we're still generally okay. Okay, let's see how it looks the second time around. This time we only have one of them to face in here. So, Sleep comes in. It's the only one that it used. Barsh did get hit. But you can see, I mean, this time, like, literally kind of no drama. And if you really want to, you can kind of wait here. But one nice thing about having the measures is that you can also use them to knock people out of sleep, if you really want to. But here I just elected to basically just kind of leave Barsh here and just like wait for his sleep to wear off. And as long as you kind of move everybody else out, they won't lose their buffs while waiting around. So it's kind of funny. So bring them back in and then go in on these guys. I was still doing a lot of that type of stuff manually just to kind of, it felt to me like still the quickest way to get them to engage. So again, I'm trying to juggle here just to minimize the damage. It seemed like it was pretty worth it. But you can see like way less dramatic encounter. It feels like the first time you encounter them, like some crazy shit always happens. And then the next ones are relatively easy. So again, I think you get the idea with the Great Crystal. I think it was relatively tame. It gets a lot more dangerous if you come in here and really try to explore all of it. But for now, at least, we definitely went through like the kind of easy story version. On our way towards the final boss of this particular section of the game, which is against Shemhazai, the Esper. Thankfully, the game is pretty generous here, and it gives you a save crystal after you're done with your kind of first path through here. And that's really helpful because it allows you to just basically get your buffs together. You obviously take damage while you do that, and I think like the more useful the buff, the more damage the measure does. And so when you try to put haste on someone, you do basically like 300 damage to them every time. And so if it takes 2 or 3 hits, you're doing like almost 1,000 damage on those characters. But if you're close to a save crystal, you can obviously just get all of the hits in that you need, and then just put a save in and replenish all of your health at the same time. And so it's really nice to kind of do the whole buffing routine before you begin your fight against the next boss. So Shemhazai is a level 43 and has 91,136 HP. So again, it puts that Tyrant HP into perspective. It literally has half the HP of the previous boss, which is kind of nuts. And I don't think it really has double the defenses. So I do think like Tyrant is disproportionately high HP, but whatever. So in preparation, you saw I got most of the buffs on. In terms of like elemental weaknesses, it says that Shemhazai's elemental weakness can vary. So it doesn't have a set one, it can kind of change, and it seems like a bit of an RNG situation. And unfortunately, in terms of negative statuses, the only one it seems to be susceptible to is Immobilized that could be relevant. And that's not one that I really particularly targeted here. So I just decided to kind of go for it and use my buffs and see if that would be enough to steamroll through the 91,000 before I got taken out. So let's take a look at the first attempt against Shemhazai. Right, here we go. I always kind of love the way Balthier comes in by himself at first, as if like he's going to do the entire fight solo. Okay, so Siphon begins. We're doing nice damage here. You can see 1,900, 2,000 from the Berserked Varn here. So we're still not even going fully all in here. Like, we don't have like crazy every single character Berserked kind of situation. Next up is Shock. Didn't really see too much negative effect from that. And so we are really motoring here. I kind of make a break to get this treasure. I'm like, oh, I won't be able to get it again. At least I can sell these for Gil or something. Now, Flayer comes in. This is very big. And 3,162. Now, Varn still survives that, which is incredibly impressive. And that's the virtue of him starting to really get that nice HP as I unlock more and more of his license board and increase his level as well. But these guys are absolutely crushing through Shemhazai here, getting destroyed. And it turns its attention to Balthier, so Varn with 372 HP is still in the fight here. It's crazy. So this has been really nice RNG for me. Like, Varn's been able to stay in this fight the entire time and done an incredible job, like done a really nice amount of damage here. Almost there, and just at that moment Balthier dies. But Varn is going to survive, and we're going to win very, very easily against Shemhazai literally the first time. So Tyrant for me was a lot more difficult, with that giant HP and the piercing Giruvegan and like the tier 3 spells being spammed and that kind of thing. But Shemhazai was relatively easy. And so with that, we conclude events in Giruvegan and the Great Crystal, and we can complete another jam-packed episode of the Final Fantasy XII Attack Only Challenge. Hope you guys have enjoyed it, and as always, please check out the Patreon if you are interested in supporting these in-depth series. You will gain early access to these videos and be able to watch them ad-free, which is always a nice perk. But in any case, that concludes this episode. I will be back soon with the next one as we really start to push towards the end of this game. But thankfully, we will now have Redis on our team for a while, and having an extra character means that maybe it's a good idea to do a few hunts as well, especially while we have that extra party member. So we'll have a look, but we are continuing our procession towards the finale, and even though Tyrant kind of threatened to be a wall, I wouldn't really say that it was, but we will find out eventually if there is going to be a storyline boss that's going to stop us in our tracks and cause a serious problem. So tune in next time to find out what happened next. Please drop a like if you haven't already, and with that, I will say goodbye. Thank you for watching. Take care.